Welcome to the Cie Automotive Capital Markets Day. Welcome to the future. Yes, to the future. For today, we're going to talk about our strategy and the rollout of this strategy over the next few years, a period that's going to be key for the future of the automotive industry. We'll end the day by sharing our guidance for 2025. Are you ready to start this journey? Of course you are. And to do this, we're backed by the essence of this great company, our greatest resource, without which we would never be able to create this future, the team that makes up Cie Automotive. They're going to guide us step by step along this path, imagining and shaping the next few years of the automobile industry. So, let's not wait any longer to get right into our future together. The automotive industry is a complex industry, constantly evolving. No paradigm is absolute, and no reality is permanent. Over the last century, we've seen considerable changes in the sector. The last few years have been particularly intense, both from the standpoint of how demand has evolved and with regard to the need for innovation. Let's go over the trends, guided by our Corporate Development Director. Lorea, what's happening? It almost seems obvious to say that the automobile industry is in a period of deep transformation, evolving towards a new type of mobility. On the one hand, new motorization technologies are shaping the future of an industry whose most immediate challenge is to be sustainable. On the other hand, the increase in connected devices and the focus on design and the user plus autonomous driving show that the consumer's demands are changing. In this context, the main role of the automotive industry today is to respond to the evolution of customers' expectations and at the same time maintain sustainable and profitable growth. As a utopian goal taken to the extreme, the zero concept world, innovating to zero with zero emissions vehicles, zero waste, zero accidents, and zero defects. In this context of evolution and transformation, which trends will be pointing the way ahead in the automobile industry? Let's start talking about electric vehicles. Demographic changes and new generations of consumers are motivated by facts like the climate crisis and require a new mobility ecosystem. At present, it's estimated that over a third of all the cars manufactured in 2025 will be electrified vehicles, either hybrid or purely electric vehicles, which represents an enormous pressure on the OEMs. There are many challenges that the electric car still has to meet, but completely aligned with institutions and regulators, a significant segment of the population is demanding more ecological cars, and the sector must provide a response to this demand. So, without a doubt, it's a question of time before these targets are gradually achieved. Now let's talk about autonomous vehicles. Within the next few years, there will be a generalization of autonomous cars in our society. It's interesting to see where the industry is heading, to this futuristic landscape of autonomous cars, in which will be both drivers and passengers at the same time. It's true that there are still some obstacles that will hinder this expansion, and it's highly likely we'll have to wait longer than we had hoped to have really efficient autonomous vehicles. But there is a clear commitment from the sector, which is directing a significant part of its investments in this direction. We can also talk about connected vehicles. If there's a buzzword in the industry, it's connectivity. People are increasingly looking for a car that's connected to the rest of their world. They already have that with their mobile phones, their virtual assistants, their domotics, and so on. We need to have many high-speed connections to be able to achieve that level of experience. And so automobile manufacturers will join forces with technology, telephony, and infrastructure businesses. And this is how the new Internet of Things platforms will implement the next generation of services for vehicles. Now, we have to take into account the center of all of this, consumers and their comfort. One of the key aspects in analyzing the megatrends in the sector is the importance of the customer. Demand has changed considerably in the industry. Before, it focused on power, aerodynamics, or the exterior design. But nowadays, customers value other aspects such as assisted driving, the comfort of the space, or a smart infrastructure shaped by technology. It's about adapting the physical space of dealerships to the digitalization era. We're talking about screens and entertainment, which will become more important inside the vehicle. We're talking about opening up spaces with large panoramic roofs without sacrificing safety. We're talking about comfort in the broadest sense. Now let's talk about digitalization and Industry 5.0. On the one hand, it's expected that over the next few years, thousands of new digital companies will alter the current supply chains for the automobile sector. Indeed, some of the key aspects of digital companies are already being introduced into our industry. Digital manufacturing, connected supply chains, online sales, data monetization. On the other hand, automation, robotics, and artificial intelligence have surged during the pandemic. The path to Industry 5.0 will be defined by investments in simulation, platforms in the cloud, cognitive manufacturing, online robotics. There's a huge array of investments quantified in billions of euros, which will set the pace for our sector for the next few years. Now, innovation. The automotive sector has shown it has made huge efforts in developing technology to meet different objectives. But even so, continual improvement and transformation will also be a constant in the future. It's clear that you need an agile mindset to innovate and to be swift to adapt. And this is only possible if we listen to and understand what consumers need. This will guide the process of creating strategies, developing new products, the production process, commercial efforts. And it's what will make the difference when maintaining the high levels of competitiveness that are so important in our industry. Finally, association. More recently, we've seen mergers between manufacturers and suppliers in the sector, and this has confirmed that this trend is well underway. Because to tackle the complex challenges of our industry, there has to be unity and joint action. There are many challenges that can only be overcome through collective efforts, seeking synergies. Association, cooperation, this can provide unique solutions to unique problems, and we're convinced this is going to shape the future of the automotive industry. And this, with these challenges and these complexities, is the environment we're moving in today at Cie Automotive. It's a complex sector in the midst of transformation, which requires us to bring out the best in us. It's an industry for the future, which involves implementing flexible strategies that evolve and shift over time. It's constantly progressing, but always maintaining our business model. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Thank you very much. We've heard Lorea explain the huge challenges facing our sector, challenges which involve action from all players in the market. each in their own context. At Cie, we've spent 25 years experiencing how the sector has been transforming constantly. And we've proved that we know not only how to adapt and survive, but that we're able to make the most of each moment and each opportunity and transform them into strategic success. And it's precisely this, our strategic decisions about electrification, digitalization, comfort and internationalization, that we're going to discuss now with Inigo and Rich. Decarbonization of society is both a need and an unstoppable trend. In the automotive industry, we know we're playing a key role in the process. And of course, at Cie Automotive, we've already started to make progress in this direction. So let me put this journey towards electrification at Cie in context, as it may not be very obvious how it affects us and what opportunities it's creating for us. It's well known that the Cie model focuses on diversification of technology, regions, markets and segments, always looking for the flexibility which has given us such good results since the beginning. You can see the results of this diversification in the fact that in 2020, 82% of sales were not linked to powertrain, and just 18% of Cie's sales depended on the type of propulsion for the vehicle. Let's look deeper into that 18%. On the one hand, 15% are powertrain components for internal combustion engines, and 3% of group sales are powertrain components for electric vehicles and their batteries. On the other hand, that 15% focusing on internal combustion engines includes projects in regions and segments which are very slowly increasing their level of electrification. So our real risk drops very significantly and would in any case be under 10% of sales. At any rate, and despite our low exposure to an electrification portfolio, we need to do an impact analysis. So we need to set an intermediate scenario up to 2030, with 30% of purely electric cars in Europe and China, and 50% in North America, 4% in Brazil, and 5% in India. To be more prudent, we've not taken into account hybrid vehicles or plug-in hybrids, although we all know that the results of Cie's impact analysis would clearly improve. By applying the percentages for electrification to our internal combustion powertrain portfolio, the percentage of sales at risk would be approximately 3% in 2025 and approximately 5% in 2030. Taking into account that Cie Automotive obtains orders each year for approximately 20% of total revenue, these percentages are very achievable for the sales efforts and endeavors to secure business which are constantly and naturally going on. Now we've seen that the impact of electrification on our portfolio is not significant by any means, let's now talk about the opportunities and challenges facing us and how we're going to tackle them. Let's understand how a typical medium-sized car from the CD segment with a combustion engine is affected by electrification. We'll start with the electronic and mechatronic elements. Cie Automotive is not involved in these, so let's move them from the equation. Our involvement in storage and management of fuel, exhaust, air supply to the engine and emissions control is negligible. As regards turbochargers, we only supply housings for the hot side and only do so in certain regions where there is no immediate likelihood of electrification. Our presence in the core area of gearboxes, without taking the houses into account, is very low, and we would have to consider that differentials will be necessary regardless of the vehicle's propulsion type. Although we're evolving towards electric vehicles, there are still heat management needs, and they are even rising. Let's focus now on the central structure of the engine, where, due to the search for flexible resources, we haven't positioned ourselves as regards engine blocks or cylinder heads, nor for elements such as valves, camshafts, piston pins and conrods. It's true that there's an important product, which is the crankshaft. If we now analyze the injection system, we see that we have the fuel rails and sometimes a pump housing. We also have to take into account that some components will be necessary in both propulsion scenarios. We're talking about the oil pumps, coolant pumps, the air conditioning compressors, and the support elements for all of these, as well as the engine itself. In this environment, we find ourselves with the natural portfolio of Cie Automotive, a range made up of medium-sized aluminium and mechanized parts linked to power transmission components and other small components, fuel rails, certain oil pans, which can be metal-stamped or cast aluminium, crankshafts, and cast iron turbo housings mainly. A portfolio based on flexible, generic manufacturing technologies. Lastly, it's clear that the roof division and practically the plastics division are unaffected by this transition. Now let's look at how to deal with an electrified powertrain. It's true that from a generic standpoint, it's made up of fewer parts, but that doesn't mean we stop having a great number of opportunities. In fact, we're already mass producing and we have secured new projects. In the power-based motor and power electronics area, we find medium-sized cast aluminium parts, casings and covers for motors, for the inverter, for the electronics, for the vehicle's interior charger, metal-stamped covers, the motor shaft, which can be of different technologies that fit at CIE, and plastic connectors. In other words, the content based on aluminium parts is even larger in an electric powertrain, and we can also opt for certain additional content for the plastics division. In the gearbox, which in many cases is a simple reducer, we once again have opportunities in aluminium housings and in different machine parts. Now let's look at the area of batteries, where, although CIE doesn't focus on producing the cells or the electronics, there are high added value parts, mainly metal stamping and tube forming, both in the casings and in the cooling system, connectors and crash protection elements. So we have considerably higher business potential in metal stamping and aluminium, and some opportunities in plastics. In these divisions, we're already securing orders for this type of components both with traditional customers and with new players from electrification. Also, we mustn't forget the considerable challenges represented by products which still do not have a clear substitute in zero-emissions vehicles. And so we're focusing on forged products, some machine products, and iron cast housings. So, we've defined a strategy with the following basic pillars. Increasing our presence in forged chassis and suspension parts, in ferrous alloys or in aluminium oils, searching for a greater contribution to lightweighting. Increasing our presence in shaft and gear machining for gearboxes for BEVs, leveraging our history of consolidating suppliers, which positions us in an unbeatable position to bring together the manufacturing capacity remaining in this area, which will no doubt be abandoned by those who today are lacking a sound financial position and advanced manufacturing standards. Being active in outsourcing traditional technologies that our customers will outsource in order to focus on the new challenges of connectivity, artificial intelligence, autonomous driving, and major systems for electric vehicles. Also, ambitious sales targets have been set in electric car-related areas which exceed the penetration ratios for electric vehicles. Finally, we're focusing on finalizing the innovation plan to increase competitiveness in forging. As I said at the beginning, the decarbonization of society is both a need and an unstoppable trend. At Cie Automotive, we can say with pride that we're already working on this, so that the result means growth in the propulsion area, maximizing all the opportunities mentioned, and executing the strategic plan that we're rolling out in each division and geographical area. As you all know, CIE's core business is manufacturing, and its DNA includes innovation and incorporating new technologies. That's why at CIE, our plants and processes are already integrating Industry 4.0, which is a set of different technologies which have simultaneously achieved a sufficient degree of technological maturity. And we're going to show many of these through a real example at CIE, an aluminium casting and machining line. So let's start with additive manufacturing. We aren't yet using this tool to produce high-volume components directly. We're using it for concept prototypes and significantly in our molds and tools, where not only do we include our own technology with different patents, but we also optimize them through additive manufacturing inserts. For example, we can achieve much faster heat extraction speeds than traditional methods, which is a key advantage. The next tool we're going to look at is the digital twin. Based on advanced simulations, it allows us to predict the real behavior of the cell without having to interfere with it. This tool is fed by sensors and data collectors for each key parameter of the line. We'll see that data is a common denominator in many of these technologies. Now let's talk about advanced robotics, where robots are working collaboratively among themselves and also even working on some of our lines hand in hand with people, the so-called cobots. Now, as for so-called big data, these are technologies that allow us to gather huge amounts of information from all possible sources at the plant. Sensors, machines, robots, quality controls, PLCs, and so on. And this allows information to be processed in real time. We've already mentioned how important data is. Also, through the so-called Internet of Things, we connect the physical world with the cyber or virtual world. So we need to identify every product we produce. And to this end, both the tool that handles the parts and the parts themselves are marked individually so that we can associate all the data with each entity we work with, whether this be a machine, a tool, or a component. As a complement to these tools, we have what's called advanced process control, which centers on developing the modeling of our manufacturing cells and facilities. Through predictive algorithms known as deep learning, we can anticipate the behavior of the processes to control them and of the machines for optimum maintenance. And to this, we can add that our plants use new interfaces, which enable everything to be available at a single glance with zero paper, which allows us to train, educate, and communicate with the team and deploy alerts and maintenance activities. Finally, at Cie Automotive, we're using the cloud. This allows us to access all the data we've mentioned and process the data together, sharing experiences of different lines, regions, technologies, and lessons learned. At Cie Automotive, we're implementing all of these technologies at our plants, always looking for measurable improvements which have an impact on our bottom line. Thanks to digitalization, we're getting our customers to see that our production can rely on robust, flexible, and constantly improving processes. Also, internally, it means another step towards improving profitability, while always looking for our return at each facility, in line with the investment discipline which characterizes us. Thank you very much.
Nowadays, it is unavoidable to talk about comfort as one of the key decision-making factors for vehicle buyers. Comfort, widely understood, includes different elements such as the vehicle interior size, the acoustic comfort, the perfect climatization, additional light, communication architecture, or the more visual instrument panel. But comfort can never mean excessive isolation, as it would imply that the driver would not be able to perceive different situations on the road, and was miss important information for safe driving. So, the OEMs have to focus on increase the level of comfort and improving the user experience at the same time that safety is a must for them. This is the framework in which our Cie Roof Systems division works. Cie Roof Systems was created in 2019 as the integration of Cie SES and Cie Gouda, former roof system business unit of Intiva Products. And its product portfolio are the kind of option elements offered to the purchaser. In fact, the features of our roof systems have currently very well accepted and have even better growth prospects. Roof system market has been growing significantly over the last decade and has a bright future ahead. In 2021, approximately 84 million vehicles are expected to be produced worldwide, and 21 million out of those will include a roof system, which means around 25% penetration rate. In premium cars, current penetration rate is about 60%, and it is less than 20% in lower segments. In 5 more years, 97 million vehicles are expected to be produced worldwide, and 25.5 million of which will be installed a roof system. That means a penetration rate of 26.5% with higher acceptance. In premier cars, where it is almost a must with more than 65%, and more than 20% penetration rate in lower segments with plenty of room ahead. This means that roof system market is growing, and it is growing faster than general automotive market, with tailwinds both from increase of global production volumes and from the additional penetration rates in the different car segments. Let's briefly analyze the different specific trends in the roof system market and Cie's strategy to answer them. First, the highest demand and growth is expected in the bottom road two-panel roofs and in the fixed glass roofs with a roller blind, where Cie has a full range of products. Second, the electric vehicle architecture needs roofs with a reduced headroom package due to battery location at the bottom of the car, which Cie products support with the technology of flat roller blind. Third, one of the newest trends implies sky glass roof. That is where Cie can offer the integration of lighting on both fixed glass roof and opening roofs, covering all ranges. Fourth, ambient comfort is now a key feature for car purchasers, and Cie has started to work on different solutions to answer that new demand with advanced development activity. A. Integrating light in fabric illuminated headliner, roller blind. B. Integrating spotlight to the roller blind. C. Integrating entertainment system in the side sunshade or store in the roof sunshade. But at the same time, more light and more ambient comfort implies more glass, which could cause temperature increase inside the car. This is something that needs to be balanced in the future. So, all in all, Cie Roof Systems is in a growing market, supported by development of electric and autonomous driving. In this market, our innovation and technical capabilities are highly recognized as one of the worldwide top 3 suppliers. The roof systems make Cie a winning key player And last but not least, I'd like to take this chance to wish all the best and fortune to all of our stakeholders in Chinese. 祝大家财运亨通，万事如意。Thank you.
Undoubtedly, one of Cie Automotive's greatest strategic successes has been its geographic positioning. From the beginning of the project, geographic diversification was one of the most sought-after angles. For one thing, the internationalization and multi-localization of our production plants has been a differential feature for a Tier 2 supplier like us, favoring the constant increase of our market share and allowing us access to our OEM customers' large global platform projects. Furthermore, our presence in different locations is a very important element of risk mitigation against the cyclical nature of a sector such as the automotive industry, in which different regions go through their own economic cycles. The CIE project was conceived in the Basque Country 25 years ago and expanded rapidly. In the early 2000s, we made the leap to the rest of Europe and Brazil, and then came Mexico. In all these locations, we were able to position ourselves in a solid, intelligent way, in many instances through local alliances at the beginning. And we always felt that we arrived right on time, before the explosion of the local automotive market, allowing us to make our investments profitable. And so, we continued to develop the European and American markets for years, until 2013, when we made a very important new qualitative and quantitative leap, landing in India. The creation of the MCIE project and our entry into the promising Indian market marked the beginning of our Asian adventure, a market that nearly 10 years later we know well and where we work with all kinds of customers in different industry segments. So we have decided to continue to bet on Asia. In 2019, we added China to our global presence through the integration of CIE Gold's roof system plants. As the world's leading automotive market, with a third of the world's vehicle production and a significant growth expected in the coming years, we are confident that our latest geographic commitment will undoubtedly prove to be a new success. A geographical positioning developed intensively during the last 2 decades that makes us a renowned supplier in each and every one of the main automotive markets. A geographical positioning that is becoming increasingly more balanced between different regions, in which the markets with the greatest future projection, such as China, India, Mexico, and Brazil, play an important role. A geographical positioning that today is a guarantee of success and that we will continue to bolster day by day.
As you all know, CIE is able to produce components in each and every technology. Our positioning is therefore based on multiple technologies and makes us stand out for our customers. In each of the technologies, we have an overall technological vision, but we adapt the specific strategy to the different geographical areas depending on the situation of the different markets. Now we're going to look at the future of all of them, with some of the people responsible for our technological areas: Aitor, Justino, Ander, Fernando, Oscar, José Luis, Alex, and Manoj. With the acquisition of the Inteva Roof System division in 2019, currently named CIE Gold, and its integration with CIE ACS, Cie Automotive became the third largest player worldwide in this market niche. Globally, the division has two main objectives: growth and reducing costs. There are two paths to growth: development of roofs with different customers and geographical regions, and development of ACS products such as luggage covers or the flush door with Gold's existing customers. Let's look at the world's biggest market, China. In this geographical area, the division has 9 plants. At these, and in Asia in general, the major challenges facing us involve, for achieving growth, working on developing a low-cost roof to be able to compete with local players, attracting new OEM projects from new Western or local OEMs with the goal of broadening our customer portfolio, which is not currently highly diversified, promoting products in addition to the roofs that ACS had with Gold customers, such as flush door or luggage cover systems, and finally, developing the Indian market, either with a greenfield approach or from China, as is done at the moment, for reducing costs, streamlining the CIE Gold Wuhan and CIE AC Wuhan plants, striving for structural and operating synergies, and vertically integrating glass encapsulation with the goal of reducing procurement costs and being able to access a greater number of suppliers. Now let's move to the European market, a continent where we have 5 plants which are facing considerable challenges, linked above all to reducing costs. The main challenges are reorganizing the Lothorna plant in Slovakia and optimizing it from the production flow perspective, completing the closure of the former Gifhorn factory in Germany, successfully industrializing new projects for premium German customers at the Oradea plant in Romania, and changing the current ERP through the implementation of SAP in order to unify it with the rest of Cie Automotive. And finally, promoting products in addition to the roofs that ACS had with Gold customers, such as flush door or luggage cover systems. Finally, let's move to North America, a continent where the main goal is growth, and where we have plants in Mexico and the United States. Plants where we have the following targets: securing substitutes for key projects for the Puebla plant due to their high volume, successfully industrializing the new project for American customers at the Auburn Hills plant, securing projects from new OEMs in roofing to grow our division in North America, as well as to boost cross-selling between products in ACS and Gold customers. And finally, changing the current ERPs to unify it with the rest of the systems of the Cie Automotive Group. With all these ambitious challenges ahead of us, we can confidently state that Roof Systems is a division with a great future, both due to its high value generation potential, thanks to the increase in billing and the gains in profitability, and due to its presence in one of the segments with the biggest projected growth in the comfort environment. Thank you very much for listening. The Cie Automotive Group is one of the most important players in the forging world, thanks to the 17 plants located around Europe, India, America and China. At a European level, the forging division has 6 plants in Spain, Germany and Lithuania, all of which fall under the umbrella of our listed company MCIE. The challenges in Europe focused on the following: developing new forged components for electric cars, investing and developing aluminium forging, growing through horizontal press projects that enable us to gain market share in driveline, developing competitive solutions for machining of forged parts, and finally, streamlining and resizing the German forgings. In India, we have 7 plants, located mainly in Pune and Bangalore. These plants have a major development project ahead of them and are facing the following challenges: increasing capacity through the construction of a new plant in Coimbatore, the launch of a new line for machining crankshafts for local customers, extending forging capacity with a new semi-hot forging press for driveline components at Pune, and finally, successfully industrializing the new projects secured in the last year. If we move to the American continent, in the north we have our two Mexican plants, Forjas de Celaya and Bilforge, and to the south, the Auto Forjas plant in Brazil. Our goals are threefold. First, expanding the current Bilforge plant in Mexico to industrialize the new projects obtained and continue to develop the plant. Secondly, executing the launch of new products for various customers, OEMs and Tier 1s. And thirdly, successfully starting up the new line of transfer forging for driveline products in Brazil. Finally, regarding the presence of our forging in China, we have the Nanjing plant, the result of the joint venture with the Donghua Group. Here we expect the following: to define and implement the relocation plan agreed upon with the Chinese government, develop and implement new products and processes along with European forging, and continue to implement the automation of the forging lines, developing the piece-to-piece flow efficiently. In short, with these challenges in mind, we're convinced that forging is the technology which can most benefit from consolidating players, while it evolves towards new products which will be implemented in the future mix of vehicles. Thanks to you all for devoting a few minutes to the forging division. The Cie Automotive Group has plants devoted to manufacturing machine parts in Europe, America and India. It also has limited activity in China at one of our multi-technology plants. At our 17 European plants, located in Spain, France, Italy, the Czech Republic and Slovakia, the future is setting us the following challenges: increasing added value and the complexity of our products as a differentiation strategy, developing components for electric and hybrid vehicles, for example, electric engine rotors, ground gears and differential gearboxes, and consolidating our leadership in Europe in chassis parts by focusing on competitiveness and internal efficiency. Let's travel now to the American continent. In this region we have 3 plants in Mexico, 4 in the United States and 3 in Brazil. The goals set for these plants are to continue developing the business and diversifying the current customer base, to attract products with higher added value, especially for electric or hybrid vehicles, to develop the transmission and driveline components business, as well as to hold our strong position as a strategic and preferred supplier for chassis products, and finally to improve competitiveness by optimizing production equipment and automating or digitalizing industrial processes. Lastly, if we shift to our 2 plants in India, we find that our greatest challenges involve the following: successfully handling major growth in the business by extending the current plants and investing in new machinery, making the most of the context of locating in India imports from other countries, especially from China, and increasing the export business, mainly to the American market. In short, as you've been able to see, we're focusing the machining technology towards components with higher added value and complexity. We therefore expect to grow significantly, boosted by our extraordinary knowledge of the technology, our strong global positioning, and our efficient business model. Thank you very much. The Cie Automotive Group produces parts using aluminium die casting technology and has a total of 10 plants located in Europe, India, North America and Brazil. I'm now going to explain the biggest challenges we're facing in each of these places. Let's start with Europe. In this area we have a total of 5 production plants, 3 in Spain, 1 in Romania and 1 in Russia. Our main challenges involve the launch of a greenfield for high-pressure die casting machines of over 2,000 tons at the Al casting plant in Spain. Taking advantage of the sound financial and technological position at Cie Automotive to develop our production capacity and act as a vehicle for consolidating the sector in Europe. Focusing on securing new projects for electric and hybrid vehicles and diversifying our customer portfolio by focusing on high added value machined components. Now let's go to India. We have the plants belonging to EEL, which we acquired in 2019. These plants are located in Aurangabad, Pune and Pantnagar and are devoted mainly to two-wheeler components. In this geographical area we have several challenges. Rolling out production at the new aluminium die casting plant built at Aurangabad, transferring CIE's technology and know-how to increase internal efficiency and product quality. And finally, attract new customers and develop new high-added value products for the passenger vehicle sector, four-wheelers. As for our presence in North America, we concentrate manufacturing of aluminium parts in Mexico at the company Cie Celaya, where we have 2 major challenges. On the one hand, industrializing and starting up production of an important new project for a Tier 1, and on the other hand, continuing the plant's growth and development plan, maintaining and improving operating and economic ratios. Lastly, in Brazil, we have a plant devoted to aluminium die casting, which is facing the following challenges. Manufacturing aluminium components for steering systems, as well as added value aluminium products for engines and transmissions. Also, we have to carry out the automation and digitalization of our main industrial processes. With these objectives in mind, globally, from the aluminium division at Cie Automotive, we focus on growth and diversification of the customer portfolio. In this way, we'll continue contributing to this great common project through a technology which is a clear winner among the new trends in the automotive industry, thereby contributing to the lightening of vehicles and actively participating in the new hybrid and electric propulsion trends. Thank you very much. The Cie Automotive Group is devoted to manufacturing stamped parts and tube forming in North America, Europe, India, Brazil and China. The 5 stamping plants in Mexico are a worldwide benchmark because of their excellence and efficiency. These production centers have various challenges that lie before them for the next few years, which include the construction of 2 greenfield sites, one for stamping and assembly and one for painting, with the goal of covering the need for additional capacity. Increasing capacity at Celaya with transfer and progressive presses, as well as increasing investments in tubes for steering systems. Leveraging the opportunity to secure parts for electric vehicles with Tier 1 customers and for roofs. Growth in battery and body-in-white parts in electric car platforms. And introducing new products, transmission, engine, suspension and electronic components. Now let's look at Europe, where we have 5 plants, 3 in Spain and 2 in the Czech Republic. The objectives for these plants in the next few years are leveraging the Mexican team's expertise to improve the European plants, successfully launching the new Servo 2000T transfer press, developing new products in the electrified car segment, and industrializing already secured projects for new players. If we focus on India, where, under the umbrella of our listed Indian subsidiary, we have 5 metal stamping plants, we expect to do the following: build a new plant in Hosur for fuel rails, execute layout, reorganization and automation of the line of presses at Khan and Nashik, continue internal efficiency gains for the business, and launch the new projects secured with local OEMs. Now, in Brazil, we have 4 plants, and our main challenges involve installing a 1,600-ton transfer press and putting it into operation in Nakayone, replacing Ford sales with new projects and customers which are obtaining their market share, and expanding the product portfolio with traditional OEMs in the Brazilian market. Lastly, let's focus on our plant in China, where we want to do the following: activate the fuel rail business, attract new customers for steering systems backed by our R&D capacity, and obtain new electric vehicle projects. So we've looked at the plans for the next few years using the technology that it all began with. One of the icons of flexibility and adaptation at Cie Automotive. The technology we started off with, and which today is one of the great examples of the transition towards electrification in our company. Thank you very much. Cie Automotive has 14 plants for plastic technology located in North America, Brazil and Europe, as well as a composites division with plants in India and the United States. Our plastics technology plants are facing many challenges depending on their geographical location. I'll now give a brief explanation of the most significant ones. In North America, Cie Automotive is facing several challenges: developing a painting line at Cie Plásticos Mexico, diversifying the customers at Cie USA, becoming the market leader in Michigan in the load floor segment, transforming Cie USA into a full-service supplier, and developing new product segments, headlines, door panels, etc. Let's go to Brazil now. In this market, we have 5 plants which have several challenges ahead of them, which include developing products which contribute greater added value to Cie Diadema, opening up to Asian customers located in areas such as Gran São Paulo, securing a larger number of chrome-plated parts, extending dual injection lines as we're experiencing higher market demand for parts, with internal and external coatings. And lastly, we also want to introduce electrostatic painting technology in our body color lines. If we move to the plastics division in Europe, we have plants in Spain, Portugal, the Czech Republic, and Morocco. At these plants, we're seeking to do the following: attract new customers and optimize production capacity at Cie Plasfil in Portugal, to secure transfer projects in Morocco, and introduce new products at the OEMs we are currently working with, and thus broaden the portfolio and consolidate the reorganization that was carried out at Cie Plasti in the Czech Republic. And finally, at Composites India, we want to develop the business, especially for electric vehicles, start up the new composites plant in Cannes, and consolidate improvements in internal efficiency. With these challenges on the table, and despite the lower relative weight at Cie Automotive of plastics technology, we want to continue on the path to growth and higher profitability, undoubtedly an important contribution of future value.
Cie Automotive operates iron casting technology plants in India and Brazil, mainly focused on commercial vehicles and off-road vehicle segments. In India, MCIE's iron casting division is upgrading its development capabilities, improving internal efficiency, and growing the business through market consolidation. These are the main targets. 1. Start up the new casting molding line, expand our machining facilities to increase added value offered to our customers, launch the new export programs for global OEMs. In Brazil, we have foundry plants oriented to heavy vehicles. Our aim there is to grow along with European customers to double our market share, diversify our target market towards North America with the objective that exports will account for more than 20% of our sales, consolidate the industrialization of new projects for German customers, and install 4 robotized machining cells in addition to automated painting process. Despite being the division with the smallest relative weight in Cie Automotive today, the iron casting has a strong position in emerging markets, markets with high growth potential and which are expected to contribute significantly to the company's future. Thanks for your attention.
As we've seen, the operating part of the business is undoubtedly key. What's also fundamental is the role played by other areas of the organization in optimizing performance and, what's most important, in maximizing operating cash flow. We're now going to see the implementation of strategies in the financial and tax areas, as well as the group's risk analysis and control framework. We'll be guided by Susana, Irache and Maria, 3 of our corporate directors. We're going to talk about compliance at Cie Automotive, the department responsible for the functioning of the second and third lines of defense. Compliance reports hierarchically to the CEO and functionally to the Audit and Compliance Committee and to the Environment, Social and Governance Committee, both of which directly report to the Board of Directors. Within the second line of defense, there are 2 main areas. On the one hand, the area of good governance, which includes defining and supervising compliance with the company's ethical framework and commitments assumed by the group, as well as monitoring compliance with legal requirements. On the other hand, the operational area, which is directly related to risk management and internal control of financial and non-financial information. The third line of defense, the Internal Audit Department, is globally coordinated by the Compliance Department. Through its annual plan and the necessary resources are managed and approved independently by the Audit and Compliance Committee. The annual plan includes the periodic auditing of the most critical processes of the group's process map, as well as a plan of rotating audits of all the plants and a detailed review of the most important investments. In order to create a comprehensive management of the department, as well as consolidating and standardizing how it runs, the compliance department in the operational area is mainly managed through the SAP GRC, Governance, Risk and Compliance tool. The company's risk map is created through the risk management module. The financial and non-financial internal control system is monitored and supervised through the process control module. And finally, the work of the global internal audit team is coordinated and managed through the audit management module. Risk management. Let's now look at the 2020 risk map. It takes into account 19 risks, 6 ESG, 5 strategic, 3 operational, 3 financial, and 2 compliance. And 66 professionals from global senior management take part in its elaboration. The risks were evaluated based on calculating the probability of past and future occurrences of risks, as well as their impact in 3 categories: economic, organizational, and reputational. In the 2020 risk map, the main risks identified were the following, with medium level of probability and low impact. 1. Cybersecurity. 2. Fraud and corruption. 3. Change in market trends. There's no doubt that cybersecurity and data protection have become even more important, confirming the trend of the last few years, with the necessary digitalization due to teleworking and the progressive automation of the processes linked to Industry 4.0. With regard to fraud and corruption, I'd like to refer to the 2020 Transparency International Report, which includes the anti-corruption laws in force in the countries where the company is located. The risks from market trends are largely linked to all the global movements for mitigating the effects of climate change, with a direct impact on consumer expectations. This also gives rise to a very strict regulatory framework in areas such as energy consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, waste management, and the circular economy. Europe and China are currently the most demanding regions with regards to environmental legislation, with a high commitment to becoming climate neutral. As I mentioned at the beginning, risk management is under the responsibility of the compliance department. To mitigate the risks, we have an internal control system integrated into the SAP GRC tool, a tool which integrates and consolidates the different ERP systems running at all Cie Automotive plants. Finally, I'd like to highlight that the internal audit department has a mixed resource scheme. It has its own devoted staff and outsourcing, as well as mixed internal teams made up of business controllers and corporate personnel. So it combines best practices and the expertise of each area and person and enables synergies. In short, this is the work we're carrying out in the compliance department, a work which helps Cie Automotive to be a benchmark in this area. Thank you very much for accompanying me on this journey through the compliance function. At Cie, we understand that maintaining a solid financial position is essential for generating long-term value. And so, our financial strategy focuses on the following pillars: diversified financing sources, financing linked to ESG criteria, an appropriate liquidity reserve, and active management of the capital structure. Let's concentrate first on the diversified financial strategy. We've set a mid-term goal of balancing our sources of financing with a balanced contribution of bilateral gross debt, of structural and institutional financing, and financing from capital markets. Our financial strategy is absolutely committed to the ESG criteria which govern our business model. This means that we will successfully increase the gross financial debt linked to ESG criteria at 28% in 2020 to levels of 50% in the next few years. We'll therefore prioritize the balance between industrial activity and its positive results with our commitment to respect the environment, the social criteria, and the group's good governance. The third pillar of our financial strategy is to ensure an appropriate liquidity reserve. In this regard, we'll continue on the same path as the last few years, providing comfort to our various stakeholders, while also ensuring a liquidity reserve of approximately 60% of gross financial debt. A liquidity reserve must be liquid in the long term and with an optimized cost. The fourth and final pillar of our financial strategy will lead us to boost matrix coordination, which will allow us to maximize opportunities in various countries. In this way, we'll continue to be able to actively manage the capital structure, optimizing working capital to reduce debt, extending the term of the debt, which at the end of 2020 was an average of 3.2 years, and managing to have about 70% of the debt with maturities of over 3 years. Maintaining our policy on finance costs, which currently represent slightly more than 1% of sales, and which will be decreasing gradually over the next few years, alongside the deleveraging of the company. We're going to achieve an optimum capital structure by combining natural hedging and non-speculative derivatives, which match our risk profile, achieving active management of the potential exchange rate risks, while always seeking a balance between cash flow generation and debt. And over the next few years, we'll have fixed interest rates of approximately 50%. So, I'd like to highlight that the group's financial strategy is and will be linked to credibility and the soundness of its management, fostering a close collaboration with current and future financing entities who are our travel companions in this new and thrilling challenge. Thank you for your attention. Since the very beginning, at Cie Automotive, we've always promoted an approach of respect and compliance with the regulations, aligned with value generation as regards tax. Some years ago, we created the first definition of a corporate tax strategy by establishing a policy framework and a single tax culture for the entire Cie group. From that point on, there have been ongoing reviews of the strategy, and it's been enriched by adopting the best and strictest practices in terms of transparency and tax behavior. We could say that CIE's tax culture is governed by the following principles. Firstly, responsible fulfillment of our obligations and a reasonable interpretation of the regulations of all the countries where we're present. At CIE, we avoid any type of contrived or opaque tax structure. We even keep away from those which, although they are not, seem to be this type of structure. There's no place for tax engineering at CIE Group. We invest a great deal of resources in preventing and reducing significant risks. Additionally, we foster a relationship with the tax authorities that's based on transparency, trust, and mutual cooperation. Finally, we understand our tax contribution to be a contribution to society, considering Cie Automotive to be a social agent that's contributing to the development of the countries in which we operate. In short, we have a robust tax management model to which we devote the necessary resources to ensure responsible and efficient behavior, which is not too far distant from our operations and is very much in line with our business. As regards this responsibility, this year we've taken a step further in our commitment to transparency, and for the first time, we've published our tax contribution report, in the spirit of aiding an understanding of the tax and social contribution made by the group. Among the data published in this report, I would like to highlight that in 2020, the year of the pandemic, CIE has generated over €1 billion in value for society. Almost 200 million have been allocated to our shareholders through the distribution of dividends and capital reduction. Over €400 million have been paid as salaries to our employees. €350 million were allocated to paying taxes, both our own and collected from third parties. And finally, we have reimbursed financial institutions with the amount of €35 million. Parallel, we're convinced that at CIE we're acting appropriately in our tax approach. We've requested adherence to the Spanish Tax Authority's Code of Good Practice, thus reaffirming our duty of responsibility and transparency on tax issues. After giving an overview of our tax contribution, I'd now like to focus on corporate income tax and its future outlook for the next few years. Let's start by contextualizing our tax scope. CIE is very diverse, with companies in 20 countries under 22 tax jurisdictions with very different legislations, which, as well as being very different, are always shifting. So, Brazil makes up about 7% of sales of the group and is taxed at a nominal rate of 34%. In North America, where we have about 26% of sales, we're taxed at a nominal rate of between 30 and 25%, depending on whether we're talking about Mexico or the United States. In Europe, which contributes 41% to the group's sales, the tax bracket is very wide, between 15 and 28%. Lastly, in Asia, we have China and India, with national nominal rates of 25%. As you see, it's a very diverse mix. Weighing the contributions of each geographical area to the group's bottom line results in a theoretical nominal rate for CIE of 26% of EBT. But that theoretical 26% is not our reality. As we mentioned earlier, we behave in a tax-responsible manner. But as in the rest of the areas, we're pursuing excellence and working to achieve a tax performance which is also efficient. This is why we're working on optimization that will enable us to position ourselves in a way that's sustainable over time at an effective rate of around 22%, which in terms of payment drops to 15%, 11 points below our theoretical nominal rate. And how have we achieved these results? Well, among the different tools we use, we can highlight that we've learned how to make the most of a tax level of inorganic growth, relying on optimization levers such as the tax amortization of financial goodwill, or seeking optimal use of incentive regimes, such as in the case of China, where, due to the nature of our business, we've achieved a tax rate for the majority of our operations which is significantly lower than the country's nominal rate. I want to stress that the most significant part of these figures is not the data from the past or the current situation, which is highly efficient, but that as a result of our management and the visibility we have over the next few years, we can state that Cie Automotive will be capable of maintaining these levels of efficiency, even going beyond the time horizon of our strategic plan. To summarize, we can conclude that, committed to rigorous, responsible, and transparent tax practices, at Cie Automotive, we manage taxation with a very complex and plural scope in a highly efficient manner which is sustainable over time. Thank you very much for your attention. Over the course of this afternoon, we've been shown by the group's management how CIE's strategy is perfectly in line with the trends in the sector and how we're responding to the challenges we're facing for all of the technologies that we're working with. We've also seen our corporate approach. All of this has been undertaken with a very clear objective, maximizing cash generation. In the various areas, by implementing specific strategies, we always strive for excellence and focus all our efforts on our results. Proof of this is found in the extremely high levels of profitability, over average for the sector, which we've obtained in all the countries where we operate. How have we done this? It's thanks to our business model. It's a business model that we've been developing and improving over the last 25 years, and which already on numerous occasions has shown its capacity to address different crises and has enabled us to emerge stronger from these crises. I've always said that our management model is different and unique, and our intention is to keep it that way. We're now going to look at the 6 pillars which underpin the model. 1. Geographical balance. Our presence in the main automotive industry markets with 110 production plants and 10 innovation centres in 16 countries enables us to be a benchmark global supplier, while it helps us to mitigate the risks of exposure to the cycles of the different regions. And it must be highlighted that Asia, the leading market in the world in vehicle production, today represents almost a third of our sales, when a decade ago we weren't even present there. 2. Commercial diversification. We have a portfolio made up of both OEMs and Tier 1s, in which we avoid concentration and overexposure, which allows us to maintain freedom of investment, guided exclusively by profitability and non-commercial criteria. 3. Multi-technology. Our product portfolio, made up of all manufacturing technologies, provides our customers with a selection of the technology which best meets their needs at each time and enables CIE to redirect its investing efforts towards the technologies which are most in demand, always ensuring our future. 4. Financial discipline. A strict commercial policy, operating excellence and constant improvements of process efficiency. Low fixed costs, investment with an ROI of over 20%, effective financial and tax policies. All the decisions by Cie Automotive are part of our rigorous financial discipline focusing on generating cash flow. 5. Decentralized management. We firmly believed in a lean structure, local management and operating autonomy of the plants. A philosophy which guarantees fast, simple and direct decision-making. This is even more important at complicated times such as during the pandemic. 6. Integration of ESG standards. Allow me to examine this last pillar of our business model more deeply. It's the most recently incorporated pillar, but it's of increasing importance. After 4 years working intensively on environmental, social and governance, ESG aspects, in 2019 we officially incorporated this 6th pillar into our business model. Reality showed us that ESG is part of our organization, of strategy deployment, of our daily activity, of operating decisions and our relationship with different stakeholders. The ESG 2020-2025 strategic plan is the culmination of this integration, a strategic plan with 4 main lines of action. First, ethical commitment. Based on the principles of transparency and legality in management, responsibility and integrity in decision-making, and formulated through the Code of Conduct. Second, eco-efficiency. Environmental commitment, centering on critical aspects such as contributing to the efficient decarbonization of production, monitoring and reducing our environmental footprint, and moving towards a circular economy involving optimization of resources and reuse of materials. Third, CIE culture. Training and empowering, attracting and retaining talent, and fostering equality, diversity and respect. Fourth, active listening. Constant and proactive communication with all our stakeholders, promoting honest relationships with all of them. 4 lines of action of a strategic ESG plan rolled out at all the group's plants through the implementation of an ESG scorecard with 79 reporting and regular control indicators, which we will share with you soon. In short, 6 pillars that support a sound, coherent and resilient business model that enables us to look to the future with optimism. This is why we're here today, on this Capital Markets Day, to talk about the future, about our future, and to talk about our commitment with regard to the next few years. Today, we're launching our CIE 2025 strategic plan, a very ambitious plan which is undoubtedly going to mark a turning point in the history of the group. 75 million vehicles were produced in 2020, but it's estimated that 96 million vehicles will be produced in 2025. This is an increase in volume of 28%. In the same 5-year period, and taking 2020 as our reference, CIE sales will grow almost 50%. They will outperform the market by around 20 points, gradually increasing our market share in all geographical regions. Of course, we're always talking about the same exchange rate with the same perimeter. In 2025, we will exceed an EBITDA margin on sales of 19%, strengthening our position on the podium of the most profitable suppliers in the sector. We expect to invest about 1 billion euros over the 5-year period, CapEx which represents about 5% of annual sales and which is divided almost equally between maintenance and growth projects. In line with the tax plan presented earlier, we're considering an annual payment for corporate income tax of approximately 2% of sales. With all this, we're talking about a new CIE, capable of generating a cash flow, which, during the period of the plan, will maintain a rate of EBITDA conversion into operating cash flow of around 65%. This represents sustainable operating cash flow of approximately 500 million euros from 2025 compared to the more than 300 million generated before the pandemic. We must highlight once again that all these commitments relate to constant exchange rates and the current perimeter of the group. And within this perimeter, achievement of those targets will mean very significant deleveraging during the period, which will drive our debt level to 0.5 times net financial debt to EBITDA, which will enable us to invest up to 1.5 billion euros without our debt level exceeding 2 times net financial debt to EBITDA at the end of the period of the plan. 1.5 billion which can be allocated to any type of corporate transaction, acquisitions of companies, treasury stock, purchase of minority interests. The focus and the decision will always be aimed towards greater value generation. As you can see, this new CIE means greater generation capacity. It means greater size, financial soundness, and sustainable profitability. It means, in short, being able to obtain an investment-grade rating. And before passing on to the Q&A session, I would like to end by saying that I see 2025 as a magical year. It will be the moment when our dreams will finally come true. Cie Automotive will become a company with an EBITDA of 1 billion euros and 500 million in net income. It's a very ambitious dream, which will put us to the test once again and will demand the best from us. But without any doubt, a dream within the reach of a CIE which has all the tools necessary to make it come true, including the most important one of all, the more than 25,000 workers of the group who make us a unique company in the sector, thanks to what we make together, to what we are, a great team. We are global. We're excitement. We are integration. We are technology. We're sustainability. We're resolute. We're efficient. We are innovation. We are human. We are ambitious. We are diversification. We are development. We are close. We are family. We are the future. We are CIE. Well, let's get started with this Q&A with all the questions you've been sending us, in which my colleagues are trying to group into blocks of questions so that we don't repeat them. Remember, you can keep on sending us your questions through the text box, which appears under the signal. And that's it, let's begin. Let's start straight away with the first questions that are coming in. So let's start. To clarify, when you were talking about the dream in 2025 of the 1 billion in EBITDA and the 500 million in income, does this include inorganic? Well, we've mentioned that at an organic level, we have 5 major goals. We talked about sales, of growth that far outperformed the market. We talked about growth in margins that reached over 19%. We talked about very important control over CapEx. we talked about 2% tax payment, and we talked about a considerable cash generation over the period. Over 2 billion in cash generated. Of course, with this cash generation, we can tackle inorganic growth and with it achieve the dream of obtaining 1 billion euros in EBITDA and 500 million euros in net income. So, to answer your question, yes, the dream includes inorganic growth. So let's continue. In the last few years, the CIE sales pie chart has been showing greater weight of OEMs compared to Tier 1. Why has this happened? And, talking about OEMs, how have you been affected by the mergers between OEMs that we've been seeing? I think this is for you, no? Okay, yes. Yes, we are seeing mergers between OEMs. And we understand that there's something that's completely natural and which makes economic sense. At the end of the day, in the last few years, we've seen OEMs facing mega investments, which individually there's no way they can manage to return. So these alliances, these cooperations between companies, what they're trying to do is to make these mega investments cost effective. But also, we aren't just seeing it at an OEM level, like you've been asking. We're seeing it at all levels of the supply chain. We've seen it in OEMs in Tier 1 and in Tier 2. In fact, I think we're the best example of concentration in our space in Tier 2. Also, you were asking about the weight of OEMs in our customer pie chart. And it's true that they've been growing in importance. I think there are two reasons. Firstly, we think that the incorporation of Intervo roof systems in 2019, in which we sell directly to OEMs, has affected this pie chart. And secondly, another reason, I think it has to do with that intense growth we're experiencing in emerging markets like India, Brazil and Mexico, where Tier 1 is a lot less developed and where we sell directly to OEMs. So, let's keep going. You haven't mentioned the future shareholder remuneration policy. What can you tell us about this? It's my turn, isn't it? Yes, it is. Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the issue of the dividend. But of course, we're going to continue with the same dividends policy, which, as everyone knows, is a payout of a third of net income. As we were already discussing in our presentation, growth in base net income is very significant in the next few years. So the same dividends will be increasing at the same rate. And don't forget that we're always focusing on shareholder profitability. And of course, we'll be able, as we did in 2020, to do a share buyback program to reduce capital again, as long as we understand that the market does not reflect the true value of our project. Next question. The lower level of maintenance capex in the last few years is remarkable. And this helps you in the goal of conversion ratio of operating cash flow. What can we expect in the future with regards to the maintenance of capex and growth capex? And here's another question. Will the growth capex percentage be different by geographical region? Okay, Lorea, this one's for you as well, please. Yes, I think this is a subject we've been discussing in the last few quarters. We're aware that over the last few quarters, the maintenance capex percentage has been dropping for several reasons. On the one hand, I mention again the integration of Inteva in 2019, because as it's a much less capex-intensive business than the rest of our Tier 2 businesses, it affects the maintenance of capex percentage. We also have made a conscious decision to stop investment, or at least considerably limit our investment in certain divisions, such as our German forges for MCI Europa. And lastly, I think another influence is the systematic control of capitalizations that we're rolling out. So with all of this, it's true that the traditional 4% is being left behind. Jesus Marie said a moment ago that we're going to invest around €1 billion over the next 5 years. This equates approximately to 5% of annual sales. Now, in this 5%, a little more than half, so between 2.5 and 3%, will be the part of maintenance capex, and the rest, 2 to 2.5%, will be the part of growth capex. I'm sure you already know that capex has to do with new expansions, new capacity, and to answer the question on regions, I'd say yes. It's more heavily focused on those regions where we're seeing very intense growth in the coming years, such as Mexico and India. So, let's keep going. We have 2 questions about electrification. First, how will you mitigate the fact that an electric car has fewer components than an ICE? And secondly, is your electrification strategy different according to country? Inigo. Yes, what's really important for CIE is not comparing the number of parts of an internal combustion powertrain compared to an electric powertrain. As we've tried to explain in the presentation, really, in the internal combustion powertrain, there are many parts that we really don't make. So what we have to do is to compare the target value that we have in parts that we make for the internal combustion engine compared to the potential value that we have in the parts we already make for the electric motor and those that we can make. So comparing everything to everything makes no sense for CIE. We need to compare the scope of CIE in the 2 engines. And if you do it like this, in any scenario, we end up winning. So we see many future opportunities. Regarding the different geographical regions, yes, we have different strategies in different geographical areas, but really, it's the market and the pace of electrification that shapes this. We're technologically prepared to follow the demands out there, but it's the demands and customers which are really going to set the pace in the different regions. Next question. What remains after the 19% in the EBITDA margin? Will CIE have achieved its maximum potential as regards profitability in 2025? Oh, what a question. Well, those of you who know me know perfectly well that my dream is to hit 20%. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how that works. When we carry out M&A transactions, we generally include companies with lower margins, so we become fairly diluted. This occurred, for example, in 2019 with various integrations, and we dropped to 16% of EBITDA. So the work to generate value in the next few years consists of increasing that 16% to 19%. As I said before, over the next 5 years, we're going to generate a lot of cash. So there will be important M&A transactions, and the same process again, the process of reducing margins initially, and then of generating value by increasing those margins. Great. The next question says, regarding growth, what organic growth can we expect in the period? What kind of outperformance of the market does it represent? Is this outperformance sustainable in the medium and long term? And is it in all of the geographical regions? A lot of questions. Go ahead. Yes, Jesús María was explaining a moment ago how the market over the next few years is expected to grow by approximately 28%, which would mean going from the almost 75 million vehicles which were manufactured in 2020 to the 96 million vehicles we're expected to be made in 2025. That growth would mean approximately 5% in compound annual growth rate, although things really aren't so mathematical or linear, and we're going to see years of strong growth, such as in 2021, due to the post-pandemic recovery, and then we're going to see other years of lower growth. This environment is the one in which Jesús María said in the guidance that we're going to grow more, not 28%, but almost 50%. This growth in sales that we're expecting would equate to a compound annual growth rate of almost 8%. However, just as I was saying about the market, our growth is not going to be linear and mathematical. There will be years of more growth, others with less growth, and there'll be years of greater outperformance and others where it's lower. What all these years have in common is the scenario in the background. And the scenario is very clearly a one of supplier consolidation, a scenario in which we see ourselves as winners. In the end, we're global, we're multi-technology. We can refocus our offer towards wherever demand is heading. We're able to invest. We have the financial strength to invest when the project requires us to. So, I think we're exactly what the customers want. Next question. What investment volume do you estimate you could undertake in M&A under the strategic plan, and how would it be distributed between the different years approximately? In which countries or technologies do you see yourselves investing more in M&A? Well, as we mentioned before, the considerable cash generation is going to mean, at organic level, a net financial debt to EBITDA ratio of about 0.5. If we don't want to exceed a net financial debt to EBITDA ratio of 2, we have 1.5 billion euros to make corporate investments. But the majority of them will be acquisitions of new companies. Regarding the periods, well, as you know, throughout our history, there have been years in which we have not integrated any companies, and there have been years in which we've integrated 3 or 4 companies. So it's very difficult to say exactly which specific year it will happen. Regarding technology, we're obviously talking about winning technologies, those which are going to be more in demand in the future. And when we talk about geographical regions, it's those regions with considerable growth ahead for the next few years. If you recall, in the guidance we gave in 2021, we're talking about 2 strategic successes. One was the subject of roof systems at a technological level, and the other was the growth we had in Asia, both in China and India. Now, regarding India, I'd like to mention that our subsidiary Cie posits for the next few years huge growth in the Indian market and outperforming the market, and also very significant growth in margins for the next few years. Next question says, could the tightening of the regulatory and emissions goals in Europe or in other countries represent an obstacle to your growth? Inigo, over to you. No. Really, the fact that there's a change and an acceleration in the goals and timelines for the regulatory targets set out by authorities would have an implication, no doubt, for the OEMs, which are going to have to redirect and accelerate their investments. Later, there would be implications for Tier 1s, which have products linked to those regulations, and they would have to accelerate the development of these products and create newly generated products. But that's not our case. We're a process-based company. Our innovation concentrates on developing processes with the highest excellence and the highest efficiency, but not on creating new products with new features. For that reason, we don't need to make any disruptive investments, neither now nor in the future, in order to meet the demands of our customers. And it also doesn't depend on the pace of the regulatory frameworks. What's the financing strategy for growth? Is it possible that a capital increase will be needed? Is the sale of any of the divisions being considered? Well, of course, considering a capital increase at this point is impossible, for 2 reasons. Firstly, from what I said before, considerable cash generation, which obviously is sufficient for all the growth in the next 5 years. And secondly, as you know, we also have a hard core of shareholders who don't want to open the way to a capital increase. When it comes to divisions, you have to remember that at CIE there are 25 divisions, and all of them are profitable. So we're not considering the sale of any division. It could happen that we have an asset that is not such a good fit with the profile of CIE, in which we could decide to sell for a reasonable price, but nothing significant, because as I said, the 25 divisions at CIE, and this is very important, are all profitable. Next question. What can we expect regarding the evolution of working capital? Do you expect any changes in policy? And what are the factoring levels you're assuming looking to the future? I'll leave this one to you as well. The answer is no. We don't expect any changes in the working capital policy. As you know, on the one hand, we have the net operating working capital, which is managed by the plants themselves. This doesn't include any factoring. And there we're very clear about what the policy is and what the goal is. The goal is to grow while trying to invest as little as possible in working capital, with no significant investment in working capital. On the other hand, we have the central financial department, which manages factoring. This factoring is non-recourse, and it's factoring that, well, as far back as I can remember, this has been following the same policy. That policy is that a maximum of 1/3 of the gross receivables is subject to factoring. So it's possible in the next few years, you've seen that the factoring level has been increasing in absolute value, but not due to a change in policy, not at all. The policy is the same, and we expect it to remain the same in future. Next question about Indiva. You've integrated Indiva with less than 9% in EBITDA. How is the integration going almost 2 years later? And what level of profitability is Indiva at? Is there a potential for it to improve further? Oh, that's a lot of questions together. Oh, yes. Well, it's difficult to address them all. But look, I'm really happy this question's been asked. I have only good things to say about Indiva. It's obvious that we've integrated a multinational in a completely different culture to that of CIE. It is also true that over these 2 years, we've devoted ourselves, in part, to operational improvements, both in Europe and in the United States, and then to integrating CIE culture. As you know, our strict budgetary control, our financial discipline, our strict commercial policy, all of these improvements we've been able to make have meant more or less an improvement of 1%. Of course, we still have another 2 or 3 years ahead, with significant improvements that we'll be seeing and sharing with all of you. We're experiencing significant improvements, and I think that in the short term, you're going to see a company with double digits in EBIT, which is the same as you have in the rest of the group. And also, as Lorea said before, you have to understand that it's an activity, a business that's not capital intensive. So Indiva generates cash flow, which is on a par with the rest of the group. Next question. Is there a risk that certain technologies in your portfolio will disappear because they become obsolete earlier than expected, or they become cannibalized by other technologies? No, we don't see any risk of obsolescence. In the presentation, we've also tried to explain the situation. We believe that all the technologies we have in the group at the moment have a future and that they have a great future ahead. It's true that there are certain technologies which are more natural winners, such as the roof systems business, plastics, aluminium die casting and metal stamping, because in the end, these are the technologies associated with the future our customers are going to be demanding for the cars in future. In other technologies, we've also implemented a very exhaustive plan, both for the commercial side and for product and technology to ensure our future, such as forging and machining technologies. It's also true that there are some technologies which are perhaps apparently less likely winners, such as casting technology. However, if we look at certain places which are becoming electrified much more slowly, such as in Brazil and India, and also some segments which are being electrified very slowly, such as heavy vehicles, we think that the future is clear, and undoubtedly there's considerable room for us. This question is directly for Jesus Marie. Do you have a team to tackle the organic growth you were talking about in the plan? And for inorganic, could human resources be a limitation? No limitation at all. I believe we have a magnificent top-level team, a team which is going to be responsible for taking on new challenges, and we have a second-level team which is absolutely ready to take on current operations. Bear in mind that over the last few years, we've put a lot of work into the succession plan in all areas of the company. And also remember that we have to take into account that we have inorganic growth for which we always integrate personnel, and these people can also be key for the growth of our group. That was the last question. So, with this final block of questions, we've finished the Q&A. Thank you very much to everyone for taking part. Thanks for sending us in your questions. If anyone feels there are any questions which were not answered in full, please don't hesitate to contact us. We'd be very happy to answer your questions. So, here we end this Cie Automotive Capital Market Day. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to the team at Cie Automotive for helping to make this event possible. Thanks also to everyone who's joined this event in streaming. Today, we're setting out on a path paved with commitments and dreams to be fulfilled. Today, we also start the future together. Thank you.